Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on whether you're watching this session live or if you're watching the recording. This is the ninth session of the Global Stop Cyberbullying Telesummit. My name is Tito de Morais. I'm one of the organizers, one of the hosts. I'm talking and I organize this event together with my friends and co-authors Sónia Seixas and Luís Fernandes. Sónia will be joining us in a minute. I'm talking from Portugal and from the surroundings of the city of Porto, a small place called Rio Tinto. And together with Sónia Seixas and Luís Fernandes, we wrote a book on cyberbullying that was published in Portugal in 2016. These sessions usually I challenge the viewers to participate. So feel free to leave your questions and your comments either on Facebook or on YouTube or on Periscope, because we're broadcasting to these three channels. But today we're going to speak on the topic of cyberbullying. And to help me to address the topic, I have with me Sónia Seixas. Hello, Sónia. How are you? Where are you speaking from?
I'm speaking from Santarém, in the middle of Portugal, more or less in the middle. Hi, everyone.
The topic for today, as it was already shown, is when is a school safe enough? To give you a brief outline of the topic that was sent to us by our guests, high school students experience cyberspace as a normal extension of their real life communication. Dankmeijer will talk about the experiences in the Antibullying Certification project, which developed a method which high schools can use to certify their anti-bullying and prosocial policy is up to date and of high quality. He will also give us his perspective on the situation of LGBTI students and on how schools should integrate attention to the LGBTI in their policy. And Peter is already with us. Welcome, Peter, and thank you for having accepted our invitation to be part of this telesummit.
Hi, Tito, Sónia. Thank you for inviting me.
I would read the small biography that you sent us, but instead of reading, I would like us to tell us a bit about who you are.
Well, I think mainly internationally, I'm mainly known as the director of GALE, which is an acronym for Global Alliance for LGBT Education. But I live in the Netherlands. I was trained as a teacher many years ago. And when I didn't get a job, because there was an economic crisis back then as well, I started to become an activist in the first place in the non-violent movement. I became a conscientious objector, refused to go into the army. But then, by then, I was getting a little bit older and realizing that I was gay. And this also kind of presented some challenges. So I more or less switched from non-violence to gay activism. And now we say LGBTIQ activism, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, and queer. So we try to be as exclusive as possible. So I usually speak nowadays about sexual diversity, which is also encompassing heterosexuality. So I've been working on that ever since on LGBTIQ issues in schools, and I started it by heading an organization in the Netherlands called Edu Diverse. And Edu Diverse differed from the LGBT grassroots movement because the grassroots movement focuses on direct help to LGBT people and to advocacy to the government. But we were kind of a combination between activist and professional. So we were more like an expertise center and a consultancy agency and a training center with the goal to mainstream LGBT issues in the school system. And we have done about 75 projects on that since.
So you began you began to be involved with this subject at 16, 17 years old. So
no, I was a little bit late with my coming out. So I started when I was 15 as a non-violent activist, but I came out when I was 23.
23, okay.
Yeah.
And what are you... yes.
Go ahead, Sonny, go ahead.
No, Peter was saying something? No?
No. Go ahead.
About your work. What are you doing to identify, to prevent, and to intervene on cyberbullying?
Well, we do a lot of research, and one of our main tasks as GALE is to do research and development. So we try to find out what is happening and how you can intervene to more effective in combating bullying. Because what we notice is that a lot of interventions are done, but not all these interventions are effective. So there's a lot of enthusiasm in the field. I must say that's very good, but a lot of these interventions are a little bit non-targeted and or kind of based on the personal opinion of people who do it. And we really want to look at whether it works or not and what the impact is. So that we do both needs assessment research, but also effect research. And we develop these methods based on the elements that we think that are going to be effective. Then we measure it, whether it works. And of course, as an international expertise center, we also then collect all this information. We are not the only ones who are doing that, and disseminate it again, and try to see that this knowledge is actually spread and used.
So basically, it's you're looking for research-based approaches, so that they are scientifically based and not based on people's opinions, as you were saying.
Maybe it's useful to mention that in a sense, because we promote ourselves as a professional organization, but we are still also activists, because even when you know that something works and you have all the evidence and very academic, that doesn't mean that the people on the ground get to know it or that they are going to do it. There is also a level of activism necessary to make things move. And there is a level of advocacy not necessary to force the government to get attention for the subject and to give them the tools to take the right measures. Yeah.
One of the things that moved us to get in touch with you was the ABC certification program, and that was something that we really would like to understand. So, how did the ABC project tackle cyberbullying?
Well, what you all already mentioned in the beginning of this transmission is that our view is that students don't see cyberspace as a separate space from their normal living space. So we combat cyberbullying in a kind of holistic approach with the general bullying policy of a school. And the general bullying, I don't know if you have spoken about this before, but anti-bullying research shows that a lot of kind of traditional anti-bullying methods don't really work because they only focus on victims and perpetrators, and they work with punishment or maybe with a little bit of education. But the key to fight bullying is that you have a positive atmosphere in the school and that you role model for students how to do this, and that you create school rules together with students. And this is also kind of the perfect preparation for later functioning in a democratic society. And not many schools do that. Many schools just have rules. They are told to the students and they have to behave. They have to sit all day in a bench and they have to listen. They are not participating in creating knowledge. They are just soaking it up. So this is not the ideal situation to learn citizenship and to have a good horizontal relationship with each other. And often agreements about social rules are not made with the class, but for the class. So,
exactly. And without student involvement,
yeah. So it's very important.
They usually are top down. They are sometimes difficult to be accepted by students.
Yes. So one of the most important, what I think is the very uppermost important thing that a school should do is that when the school starts, in the first 6 years of the academic year, the school should have a kind of program to get students acquainted with each other and to build a kind of positive group atmosphere. And in this period, they should also make agreements together on class rules and in a democratic way to use those class discussions also to update the school rules. And in those school rules, you have to be sensitive to all the environments and all the themes that students work with. So, for example, because GALE is focusing on sexual diversity should be part of that. Students won't bring that up by themselves. So the teacher has to bring that in already in the first 6 weeks of the year. But also cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is considered by many schools not part of the school. You know, that's the free time of the students or something. And it doesn't work like that because students use their mobile phone all the time. Maybe not in class. In some schools, it's forbidden to use your phone in class. But then at least in the hallway or in the school square or something. And so these things happen all the time, and students talk all the time what they have seen on Instagram and on Facebook and on this and on that, and this is part of their lives, and this influences the lessons, and lessons should be about that as well, because group processes don't limit themselves to real life. They are also online. So the rules of good behavior with each other are equally important to make them for how you interact with each other online, and what you do when it's not going right, and when you do it in the class or in the hallway, because the rules how you behave with each other in class will be slightly different than how you behave at home or in the street or in the hallway or in the toilets. So there's some general rules, and you should just see cyberspace, or I should say all the cyberspaces, because Instagram is a different space than Facebook. and is a different space than a website or WhatsApp. So all these spaces have their own properties, and they have their own advantages and disadvantages. And also, although there might be some general rules for how you behave in real life and online, there are also specific rules on what you do and don't on WhatsApp. So you need to be inclusive in all that, and you have to understand as school, as a teacher, that you have to include the whole life sphere of the students in these discussions.
But you are saying something very, very interesting when you address the cyberspace has a way of living in these young people. But how do you overcome the feeling of teachers that they can't influence cyberspace?
Well, there's many things that teachers cannot influence. They cannot influence what happens in the school toilets. They cannot influence what happens when the students are in the bus or in the on their way on school. So they can't influence what happens in another teacher's classroom. So teachers are often not used to cooperate with each other and to talk about this with each other. So in the first place, I think that they have to be aware that not only that their influence is limited, but also that they can exert their influence in a bigger way by cooperating. So they have to talk about this in their team, and they can then discuss to what extent they can act in different circumstances. That's one level, because that's kind of the level of direct control. You can have school rules and you can forbid or promote certain kinds of behavior by making rules in the school and then control that. But you can. The other level is that the school has, how do you say that, a pedagogical task. So this is preparing students to be a good citizen, and being civil and nice and friendly and supportive to each other is an aspect of that. And depending on the level of education, students don't have that. It might be that their age or their intelligence or their mental state or their family or their culture they come from or their poverty background influences the way they can understand or oblige certain rules. Many rules for civil behavior are middle class, and a lot of students don't understand them, or they have reasons not to agree with them. So this is also part of the discussion that you have to have in school. How do we want to interact with each other? And if you have students who live partly on the streets and who have a religious background, for example, with some strong conservative norms that might be excluding for some people, and they behave more or less civil in the classroom because there's a teacher checking them out all the time, then you have a situation which is not ideal, but you have to then be aware that these students live in kind of at least three different surroundings: their family, the street, and the school. And that these are different contexts that the students need to learn to navigate. So this is not something that they will discuss with their friends on the street, and also not something that they will discuss usually with their parents. So it's the task of the school to take initiative in that. And you have your middle class rules in the school, you have them, and you need to have them because, if you want to get a job and to have a good social life in later, and you want to be a good citizen, the definition of a good citizen is to be middle class. So in a certain sense, you have to know the middle class rules and to abide to them, or at least learn to use them to your advantage. And if you live in other surroundings as well, then you have to learn how to navigate those surroundings in a way that is best for everyone.
Okay.
So your question is, you can't control the teachers?
Peter, one of the things that I'd like you to explore.
Sorry.
You finished? Go ahead.
I'm finished. You can ask a question.
You can ask, Tito.
I was going to say that you mentioned the certification, and is there a methodology? Do you provide surveys, organize workshops? Do you have a toolkit? Is there a procedure that the schools
The ABC project, the
can follow
Anti-Bullying
in order
Certification
to
project,
become?
we developed a method so that schools can certify themselves or assess themselves. And it's actually 5 steps that they take. The first step is the collection of the documents that they already have, because the policy is usually kind of written down in some policy documents. So this gives a kind of basis. Then we have developed surveys for students and teachers, which measure the real safety and also how people experience safety in school, which is different, because real safety is sometimes perceived in a different way than how people feel it. Then we have a step where we have a group of students that does a review of how they, in a subjective way, view the safety of the school. They look at the surveys and the documents, but also they do their own research by interviewing other students. And at the end of this review day, they make recommendations to the school management. And then we have another day where we do the same by staff, but the review by staff has more the character of a training annex workshop. And it's more focused on their own competences and the role of teachers in the process than on the general safety of the school, because there's already so much information then collected by the surveys and by the students. And then finally, the school management reviews the results of all these previous steps, and they have a really good base to decide how to improve the school policy. And to help them do that, we have made a manual in which we list 6 effective elements of an ideal anti-bullying policy. And we also give the schools a checklist where they can check whether these elements are being implemented, and if the right measures to carry these things out are somewhere in the school.
Okay.
Can I just ask one more?
What from your experience?
Go ahead,
Can't
Tito.
hear you, Sonia. Can you repeat that?
No, go ahead.
From your from your experience, what impact and effect have you been feeling that this process has on students and on the school environment?
Well, in the first place, we noticed in the international pilots that we did in Spain, Italy, Greece, and the Netherlands. I think you have a picture of one of these meetings. Yeah, that one. And you see that everybody is really kind of full of attention. This was not a normal lesson or something. In this project, everybody was involved in a critical way, and it created a really authentic process in which everybody got committed to thinking together about how to improve the school. So this is a great advantage of this method. It's not just an assessment. It's called assessment and certification, but it is also a mobilization process that creates new ideas and new commitment. You know, in the end, the management decides about something, but it's based on the real life needs and signals of the whole school population. So that's I think one of the major improvements that this process is giving. Another thing is that we have really been thinking during the project about what works and what doesn't work, because before this project we didn't have an overview of effective elements. There's hundreds of researches of how bullying works, but in the end, many of these research are done by companies that develop and academics who develop anti-bullying programs, and then they research their own anti-bullying program, and then they say, oh, it's effective, use our program. But then people on the outside who never use the program still don't know what it is and what works. They just know that they have to buy the program. So in a sense, this type of research it's really academic research into the effect of programs, but at the same time, it's a tool in the marketing, which we didn't like. We work in the context of the European Anti-Bullying Network, and we really didn't like that, because we want this information about what works and what doesn't work available to everyone for free. And if whether you use such a program or not, you should be able to invent your own program, even when your school has little money. So we formulated 6 elements that we found back in all these programs in researches that we think that are really effective.
One question that I have there, and that you mentioned, the fact that they would be made available for free for schools, so schools could afford them. Do you provide that methodology, the surveys, and a toolkit for free for schools, so that they can develop their own, they can follow the process in their schools?
Yeah. In the first place, GALE, who was the leader of this project, has a policy that all the material that we made is available for free and without copyright. But in the second place, this was a European project under the Erasmus program, and it's also mandatory in the Erasmus program that everything that you develop with European taxpayer money should be available for free. So on our project page, you can find, and on the Erasmus project pages, you can find all the materials and all the questionnaires and the manuals. You can all download them in the different languages, in Greek, Italian, Spanish, Dutch, and English. You see it now just on the screen.
The URL that people can follow, the project's ABC project. Okay, and I've seen that you've also developed, as a result of these pilots that you did in Italy, France, I believe, also, and Greece. You developed also the Gainergy label. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. Now you know that GALE is an LGBT organization, but this project was a general project. Right. So we made a general school assessment of their anti-bullying policy, but we noticed that in some of the countries we cooperated with, sexual diversity is still quite controversial, and we were kind of, although sexual diversity is quite properly integrated in the original ABC project, we still felt the need to make a very specific version for LGBT issues. So that is what we call the Gainergy label. And another reason why we wanted to do that is we had a big discussion in the project of how we could, if we should rate schools and how we should rate schools. And many schools are afraid to be rated. They don't want, they want to kind of score their students' results, but they don't want to score themselves. They think it's very bad for their image to get a score. Well, they only want a good score, of course, and they don't want the bad score. And certainly not is it going to be published or when it's going to be used by the government or something. So they're afraid of this outside control and transparency. And even when you make a control, in the end, Ian, the European Anti-Bullying Network, decided that they do want to have a formal certification by a certification body. So they're developing that right now, and I think in a few months there will be a European formal certification based on this assessment, and that will be done by independent external consultants in an audit. But then you get not a number or a score, but the result is that you are certified or not. So it's a one-off. And I was also not very happy with that, because I was thinking schools are not good in anti-bullying policy or bad in the anti-bullying policy. They are somewhere on the scale. Some are very bad, some are very good, and a lot of are in the middle. So what we were thinking, if we could not make a label like the European energy label with 5 letters going from A to D. And that was in the ABC project, we discussed that, but that was not accepted by the other partners. And in the GALE energy label version, we did that. We developed a way to do that. So this is also a discussion for the future.
Okay, so basically, if I understand it, you have developed a methodology that basically, for instance, you can have an anti-racist organization take that methodology and apply it to to prevent racist-based bullying, for instance. And you can also have it with other types of organizations that usually children within that framework are usually targets of bullying also. Is that right?
Yes, actually, that you can do that. We made an LGBT specific version, but in the original ABC manual, we have a chapter where we describe specific measures for about 10 diversity groups, including immigration, refugees, handicapped students, Roma, race, religion, sexism as well, gender. So yes, you can choose your own focal point, or you can do it general and try to be sensitive on all of these issues. Yeah.
Okay, so basically, is that information also available on the website?
Yes, it's all in the manual that you can find on the website. Yeah.
Okay. You have mentioned how you've developed a 6-element test, and you've provided also us with an image for that. So can you go over it and outlining what is a good anti-bullying policy?
You will find this more elaborate in the manual of the project, but this is the version that we made for a newsletter for students, and we formulated it as a small test for students so that they could use these elements to test their own school. But the 6 elements are, the first one is that in the first 6 weeks of the year, you have to have this group formation that I was talking about and make ground rules. So I talked about that before. The second one is that you have to find out how bullying works and how to act against it. And that's not logical, because I also talked about that already, that it's not just a question of perpetrator or bully against a victim. And it's not about punishing the bully and about protecting the victim, but it's about the bystanders, all the people who watch, and you have to in this in the way you combat bullying, you have to do something in the atmosphere of the schools and encourage students who are not part of the conflict to intervene or to not just stand by. So And that's the most effective way to combat bullying. The third one is that you have to have a broad commitment in the school. Researchers who looked at how organizations change and improve found out that you have a certain types of people in organizations, and they are talking about innovators, early adapters, the early majority, the late majority, and the laggards. And the laggards are the ones who never want to change anything, no matter what. And the innovators are the ones that want to change always. And anything that seems interesting, whether it works or not, they want to try it out. So, and then you have a lot of people in between. And it doesn't work if you want to change the school to focus on the laggards or on the late majority. You have to focus first on the smaller group of innovators. You ask them to try something out. When it seems to work, the early adopters will take it over and they can experiment further and they can develop a routine that can be used by everyone. And then it will be used by the early majority who usually doesn't have really an objection against innovation, but never would try it themselves. And the late majority then still has to be convinced, because that's the people that don't really want to engage with innovation. They can be, they're kind of the lazy people. And they have to be convinced to do it as well. And usually you cannot convince them on the content of the innovation. You cannot say, oh, sexual diversity is so important, or bullying is so important to combat. They don't really care. But if you say everybody else is doing it, then the kind of late majority will agree with you. And in the end, after when you went through all these steps and phases, the laggards will be left, and you can give them either an exemption, or they will leave from themselves because the atmosphere of the school has changed and it's probably not an atmosphere anymore where they want to work. So they leave by themselves in the end, I think. So that's very important that you realize that this innovation goes in a slow process. You can't convince everybody at the same time, and you have to go through some problems and challenges and a process. You have to take an effort to go through all these steps, and that's part of the process.
Okay. Well, one of the things that you asked, you sent us as a quote, I really need you to comment on it. When you say education is not the most important element in combating bullying, this is provocative, isn't it? At least I find it. And I would like you to elaborate on it. So, okay, let's assume education is not the most important element. What is the most important element in combating bullying then?
Well, if you want to kind of map the percentage of the efforts of the type of interventions that add to an effective anti-bullying policy, then making these group agreements and working on these group processes is the most important issue.
Okay.
The next issue is that the bystanders are also becoming active. You can use education for that, lessons for that, to explain how the bullying process works, and then make them act up. But in this sense, the education sessions are kind of supportive for other more important initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look this kind of the setting of social rules, agreeing on them and keeping them up, that's about 60% of the total effect of anti-bullying interventions. And any educational intervention on its own, if you just have a classroom activity, no matter how effective it is, it will never change the behavior more than 15%. The research shows that even the most effective education sessions without kind of other supporting initiatives, if you have sessions on their own, you will change only 15% of the behavior on the short term, and on the long term, they kind of, the effect drops down again. So it has to be a whole school effort where education can have a role, but it's certainly not the most effective thing or the spear point or something, in
most
my opinion.
Then is it correct to say that the most effective is student involvement and an horizontal approach instead of a top-down approach, which usually education is?
You could say that in a sense, but I also think it's a little bit unspecific, because students come from different backgrounds. They can have their own ideas. If you come from a lower class background and you live on the street, it's very common and actually useful to be a little bit violent and rough. That's part of street culture. So if you bring that into the school and you say, okay, student involvement,
They need guidance.
Yeah, they need guidance. They need guidance, and that's why I also said leadership in the school is essential, because teachers can kind of bring this up and have a kind of good discussion about that. But teachers are also not used to cooperate with each other in a team. They are used to give lessons in their own class. They are kind of kings in their own class in many schools. So the leadership, the principal or the school management, has to kind of guide this into a systematic effort to involve both the whole staff, the teachers, but also the janitor and the school bus driver and the cleaners and the canteen seller in the whole effort, and the students, of course. It doesn't work without the students. So in that sense, it's true that student involvement is essential, but it's kind of too meager to say that that is the only thing.
Okay. We have a question from Fernando Ferreira. He is asking the question in Portuguese, but I'll translate. When is a school safe enough? I don't know if there is a classification system that can verify this measure, some sort of ISO security norm or something like that. And I guess more or less you already addressed this, as the ABC project did not start as a formal, with a formal body of certification, but that is being developed by the European Anti-Bullying Network, right?
Well, actually, originally when we started the project, we expected that we would develop such an ISO norm certification. But then during the project, we discovered that we could not develop that because we didn't have a partner that was a body that was allowed to make a certification in that way. So then we had a crisis in the middle of the project, because some of the partners wanted to have a formal certification and other partners said, no, it should be an interactive process which helps the school to assess themselves, and it should be an actual research. So that's different than an external audit. So we had a conflict in the project about that, and we resolved that by doing both. In the project, we developed a self-assessment because we could, with our expertise, develop that self-assessment. But then Ian, one of the partners, the European Anti-Bullying Network, worked together with Eurocert, which is an ISO certification organization. And they are developing now this formal external audit. Now, this audit, I don't know if you know how an ISO certification works or audit, but what the auditors do is that they check if the organization has all the documents and procedures and routines in order. In principle, they don't check whether these are actually implemented. So the ISO certification tells you that you have the mechanisms in place, but the auditor doesn't have the capability or the possibility to go into the school themselves and check on the floor if it's really done that way. So, and that's why a certification is not delivering a score from A to D, but just a yes or no. You have adequate documentation and routines.
Yeah, it's basically paperwork.
So we do both, but it's just the self-assessment and actually research is just is kind of an ideal element in the preparation of the audit.
Okay. Sonia, I believe you have a question.
Yes, I have. I have a question, Peter. What I would like to hear your opinion about one thing. Should attention for LGBT students to be a separate point of attention, or no, or not?
Oh, that's a very important question that I've been asking myself for 30 years.
I can imagine.
And we also actually asked this question in a statement game to the students we had from all these schools, from all these countries in Liverpool. And we did a statement game and asked them their opinion. And I think what the students said more or less covers what my conclusion is by now. In one way, you could say that it's in an ideal world, an ideal school, it should not be a separate element because everybody should be sensitive to it all the time. In policy terms, it should be a horizontal issue. It should go right through everything. But we don't live in an ideal world. Sexual diversity is often taboo. People don't dare to talk about it. They're afraid of what others might think. They're afraid of losing their status. Maybe they have prejudice themselves. And especially because of the taboo and the fear around it, you have to address it explicitly. Otherwise, you can't get sensitive on it. Mm-hmm. So, and students agreed on that as well. So it's both. And in the GALE trainings, we have developed a methodology to train teachers and school managers to show them where the general issues are and where the kind of the more specific issues are. And also when you read the manual of the ABC project and also the GALE project, you see that we already have given a lot of pointers how different effective elements work out for different marginalized groups. And in the GALE label, we are going a little bit further in how it works out for LGBTI students. And the point is that the rules and the effective elements don't change, but the way you implement them is just slightly different in every case.
Okay.
And have you been following how different countries and approach regulation on these issues on protection of these communities, being LGBT or others?
Yeah, one of the most important kind of projects of ongoing projects of GALE is the mapping of the right to education and how it's implemented in different countries. And for this, we have developed a checklist which has 15 scoring points, checkpoints. And based on the score, we divide countries into denying countries, ambiguous countries, and supportive countries. And on the picture, you see the red countries that are denying, the blue countries that are ambiguous, and the green countries that are supportive. And there are some countries where we still haven't got scores from, who are gray in this map. But if we also monitor on a more general situation around LGBT issues in all countries, and we can squarely say that what we see here as gray should be red, because homosexuality is criminalized in those countries.
Yeah. Can you give us an idea, because Portugal is in blue, and so as I can see, it's ambiguous. Can you give us what characterizes this ambiguity?
Well, maybe I should kind of give an overview of what we consider denying, ambiguous, and supportive. Denying means that sexual diversity is taboo and forbidden in a country. So clearly, for example, in
Like
Portugal,
homosexuality is criminalized, for instance.
Exactly. Or it's not criminalized, but just completely taboo. Nobody talks about it. And when you talk about it, it's kind of in a country like the Philippines, they have, or Namibia, they have very, very progressive rules for diversity in schools, but they don't mention sexual orientation or gender identity. But when you actually bring it up, you get a very fierce anti-reaction. So they don't have laws against sexual diversity. In that sense, they should be ambiguous. But because it's totally taboo and it creates a strong resistance when you even start to talk about it, we still score that kind of countries as denying. Laws are completely unreliable to measure the state of affairs in a country. So, in the ambiguous state, you are kind of, it's not forbidden and it's not totally taboo anymore, but it's a kind of sliding scale from slightly taboo or less taboo, or even the government supporting it in some way or another, but not consistently. And what you see in ambiguous countries is that the LGBT movement has gotten space to act because they're not forbidden anymore, but they have not succeeded in involving mainstream organizations to put it on the agenda. And of course, the most important mainstream organization is the government. So this is where the supportive stage starts, that we measure that we say a country enters the supportive stage when the government makes a positive statement about that it's necessary to mainstream sexual diversity in the school sector. If they do that, then they enter the supportive phase. That doesn't mean that everything is good right away, because then they still have a long way to go to actually mainstream it. But you could see every stage, denying, ambiguous, and supportive, as a sliding scale, and the whole thing is also a sliding scale. And also, if you look at the checkpoint list,
You've sent us. Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you look at the checkpoint list, there's kind of five. Yeah, they're not in here. I didn't make a picture of that. There's kind of three pillars we distinguished in the right to education. One is access to schools, one is a good curriculum, and one is the right to have a good teacher. So you have 5 checkpoints on how access of schools is given to LGBTI students. One about all kinds of aspects of a proper curriculum, a relevant curriculum, and one for all kinds of aspects that have to do with supportive teachers. And bullying is one of the checkpoints. That's one of the 15 checkpoints in our view, and it's in the pillar of access to schools, because if there's a lot of bullying, that leads to less possibility to learn well, and possibly it leads to dropout. So it's not strictly curriculum, it's not strictly the attitude of teachers, it's belonging to access to schools, to the school environment. So and schools and governments can score differently on each of these issues. For example, in the United States, you have what you call gay straight alliances. These are school clubs of LGBT youth and of allies, straight allies. And in some schools, they actually have a lot of these GSAs in a lot of schools. But a lot of schools don't do more than that. So in a sense, you could say kind of the school allows students to support themselves, and they appoint a teacher to. So that's, I would score that as one of the checkpoints under supportive teachers. But if the curriculum is still bad and they're still bullied outside of the GSA, that's only one checkpoint of 15. So a national policy that supports gay straight alliances as the only measure is completely inadequate, because there's 14 other points that they should be supportive on. And then if they would do that, potentially, then they would get a bad score on our world map.
You've sent us a graphics that I'm showing. Can you give us some feedback on this?
Yeah, these are kind of the division of the number of countries that we scored and how we scored them. On the left, you see our world review at the moment. So you see that I'm trying to look at the side. 64% of the states we think are denying. More than half of those we have little information on, because it's so taboo and forbidden that it's very difficult to collect any information from these states, especially specific information relating to the education sector. But the indications are that they are negative, especially because there's no information at all. And only a small minority of about 19%, 20% is positive, yes. And most of them are in Europe. On the right side, you see only the countries of Europe, and I'm not talking about the EC countries, but the wider European region of something like 50 states. So in there you see, because the number of supportive Western European states make up a larger part of this, that it's more or less equally divided. And if you would look at a map of Europe, you would see that the green countries are all to the left. So Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Netherlands, UK, Spain, and the ambiguous countries are more in the middle, and the denying countries are more in Eastern Europe.
Okay. Sonia, I believe we have a question there.
Yes, I do. Peter, as you said, sexual diversity is still a taboo. So when do LGBT students feel safe in their school?
Yeah, that's we have to look very specifically into your question. You ask when they feel safe in the school. And the interesting thing is that we did research on how people feel, but we also did research on what actually happens. If you do a questionnaire, you can ask, do you feel safe? Do you feel safe in the toilet? Do you feel safe in the classroom? Do you feel safe here and there? When do you feel more unsafe? When you do, what reasons do you have to feel more safe? But you can also ask, and that's what they do in international bullying questionnaires, how much did you experience the following behavior in the last year or in the last month? And then you can score, I experienced this every week or every day or every month or the whole year or once a year or something like that. And what you then see is that LGBT students in a school that promotes that they are promoting diversity and sexual diversity, and they have posters and they have a gay straight alliance and they give some lessons, that students feel really supported by that kind of interventions, the LGBT students. But at the same time, you see that in that kind of schools, the level of actual bullying behavior is also higher. So that's a strange phenomenon. That's a little bit like why does this feeling not completely kind of link to the actual behavior. So I think it's important that these students feel safer and feel more empowered, but at the same time, I think that school is responsible to actually reduce the behavior as well.
Thanks.
Peter, we already reached the hour. You sent an additional graphic that I would like if you could a quick comment.
Yeah, this is a picture of the fight and flight response, and it's something that we use in our trainings when we teach teachers and also students on how to deal with homophobia and also with all kinds of fear and anger. When you encounter something that is not in your kind of set of expectations, in your norm system, then you usually get a negative emotion like, oh, this is weird, maybe it's dangerous or threatening. And that's what we call a fight or flight response. And this picture shows that a lot of things happen in your body when you get this kind of initial instinctive response that things are different than you expect. And it's called fight or flight because you have the tendency to instinctively react with anger or to run away. And what you need to learn if you want to be tolerant and in a positive prosocial society, you have to learn to kind of suppress these initial, or not suppress, but kind of deal with these initial instinctual things and take a step back and think, oh, what is really happening here? Is there a real danger? If there's a real danger, you have to run. If you're really threatened, maybe if you're stronger, you can fight. But it's not usually in a complicated society that we live in, it's not functional to react purely on instinct. So what we need to teach ourselves, both as teachers and as students, is when people have negative and resistant responses, to recognize that we have fight and flight responses and that we kind of breathe a little bit and think about it and then start a dialogue about it and to see how we can find a common ground again. And that's kind of the essential way of dealing with diversity and also with sexual diversity.
Okay. I'm going to ask you for 3 insights for parents, educators, and professionals in general that work with children that they can apply to their lives immediately. But I'm going to give you a minute to think about it, because I'm going to present the 2 shows that we'll be having still today in the evening and late in the afternoon. So give me a minute and I'll come back for your 3 insights, okay?
Yeah.
At 6 o'clock Lisbon time, we're going to have Margarida Gaspar de Matos. She's going to talk to us about digital, happy and safe. What do studies tell us? And she worked with the World Health Organization on a study called Health Behaviors in School-Aged Children. So we're going to talk about those results. And also another study from Dream Teens, and 2 books that she has published recently. Then in the evening, we're going to have Adrian Buckingham from New Zealand, from the New Zealand Institute of Wellbeing and Resilience, that is going to tell us that preventing bullying begins with building connected, respectful community of the day. We're already 5 minutes over. My apologies for taking time than I had promised. Give us your insights, Peter.
Yeah, it's mostly a summary of what I've said during the interview. I think the first one is to discuss ground rules with students and involve them in applying them. That's the most important thing that I keep saying is important. The second thing is that include diversity in everything that you do from the beginning. It's not kind of module 5 in what
I'm not hearing.
Others and students and fellow teachers is, can you also, and the third one is,
Can you repeat the second one, because we lost you for a minute?
Okay. I said include diversity from the beginning and always. That it's not module 5. It's you can ask, just concretely ask in lessons and in team conversations, can you see this from another perspective? If you were a lesbian, would it look different for you? And the third point is relating to this fight or flight response that I discussed. If you get strong emotional responses, I would say take 3 steps. Wait till the impulse subsides. Observe what is happening with your the partner that you speak with, and then ask what is happening before you enter in a dialogue or in a conversation.
Okay.
So that's my 3 suggestions.
Thanks a lot, Peter, for your insights. Just to inform everyone that you can get more information on on Twitter. You can also get more information on the Global Alliance for LGBT education at their website, and also you can learn about their membership on their organization, also on the website, and also on the sorry, you can get on the website more information regarding the ABC project that we have been about. There is also on Facebook, so you can reach out to them either on Facebook or LinkedIn. And let me just on LinkedIn. Exactly. So, Peter, it was a pleasure, and thank you for having accepted our invitation, and look forward to see you soon.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Peter, for being here with us.
Success with the summit.
Thank you so much.
Yep, and for you and your organization as well.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We are to thank our sponsors, the gold sponsor Google. Everybody knows Google, probably use their email services and their search services as well. They have several applications that you can check, and also the .pt, which is DNS.pt, which is the organization that runs the Portuguese name DNS naming domain names system. So see you at 6 o'clock. Bye.